Because in Lab 6, what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to switch gears just a little bit, because the previous labs 1 through 5, were kind of just, I guess you could kind of say is a playground. We were just kind of getting ready, because what we're actually going to do in Lab 6 is we're actually going to start everything from scratch. We're going to actually kind of erase everything and we're going to start from there, um, which will be good. It'll be really good. But the big thing to be aware of is that now going forward, the labs are going to build on each other. So you'll want to make sure you stay up to date. And then on top of that, the instructions are going to change just a little bit. As you can see here, the instructions have just a little bit of a different format, which I actually think you'll actually enjoy, um, because they are a little bit more tried and true, because these labs have been around for quite some time. So what we're going to be doing here is we are going to, um, in Lab 6, we're going to start kind of getting some stuff ready for our database. So we've kind of become familiar with our database design for a movie rental store. But there's one thing that's big that's missing from our database, and that's prices. We don't have prices for what we charge for movies. And so Lab 6 is a preparatory step to get ready. And what I like to say is, I guess equated to, is Labs 6 to the end are very much real world scenarios. And so there's not going to be quite so much just like do this and this for the fun of it. Everything we do is for a purpose. And we're either adding a feature or we're fixing a problem. And so we'll talk about that a little as we go. And the really nice thing is, for the most part, you guys have seen most of the content that we're going to be doing pretty much from here on out. There's going to be a few extra things, but the rate at which we are learning things is really going to start to slow down. And we're going to just start applying this in kind of a little scenario. And that's kind of going to be our labs from here on out. So let's jump right into this lab, because I kind of want to explain it. We can go over any new things. Um, but the first thing that we want to do is in lab 6. One thing that I wanted to, well, let's go over the instructions here real quick and then we'll start, because I kind of want to give you an overview of what we're doing. So step 1 is we're going to add 2 columns to our rental item table. And what this is going to do is it's going to let us put pricing inside of our rentals. So when someone rents a movie, if you guys can think back to like the Blockbuster day, or I guess a modern day scenario is Redbox. If you can think back to those days when you rent a movie, now Redbox has just a price per day, right? Because you can turn it at any time. But let's say that we're offering a 1-day rental, a 3-day rental, and a 5-day rental. Each one of those have a different price. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a price and a type, where the type stores it's a 1-day, 3-day, or 5-day rental, and then the price is going to have how much that costs. And so we're going to build those, which that step's pretty easy. Step 2 is we're going to build the price table.
Brother Crew,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to stop you. On our lab 6, we are gonna do this, like how we do the lab, which is gonna go through the same, like go to the what do you call that? The Vmware, right?
Correct.
And then the only different is the instruction that is given right from the instructions are not the same as the one that we are getting before.
Yeah. So basically, instead of reading from a PDF, they have this nice little thing here for you. And the really nice thing is that they actually have queries, so you can check your answer to make sure that it's correct. Because, like I said, from here on out, it's really important that every step is done correctly, or else it's going to have repercussions later. So yeah, and actually, in here in just a minute, we're actually going to I'll do a couple of the steps with you.
Okay.
And you'll see that the process is identical. The only difference is the instructions format has changed. So
Okay. Before you go any further, so the license for the VMware, is it going to expire, or are we getting any what do you call that? Because there was something that came through my email. I don't know if it happened for other students or just me.
Yeah, everyone should have got that, and it should have told you how to get on so you could get a license key.
Was it the school who's supposed to provide it for us? Oh,
Yeah, you'll get an email, something about onthehub.com, and that'll let you do it. And in fact, on Teams, if you want, shoot me a message and I can send you a link to the instructions for that.
okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry to hold you guys up.
Oh, no, you're good. So let's take a look here. Yeah, and if you're using, so I'm actually on my computer, I'm using the VMware Workstation Player, which if you are on Windows, and I want to say they even have it on Mac now. I think last time I looked at their website, I was like, oh, they might have it for Mac now. The player, the VMware Player is free for non-commercial use. So if you want to, you can just skip the whole on the hub thing and you can just go get VMware Player straight from their website for free. And that's actually what I do myself, just because I don't use the features of the full workstation and it's just easier. So if you want to do that, you're more than welcome to do that too. All right, so then we create the price table. And when we create the price table, it's just going to be how we created tables in the past. You guys created one last week. In fact, I think you created two because you created the rating agency and the rating table. It's going to be the exact same thing, but this one is just going to be called price. And I have a couple videos on table creation out there, and I'll include links to that with this as well. So you can see that on how to create a table. In fact, we spent a whole lecture creating a whole database full of tables. so it shouldn't be too crazy. The one thing I wanted to point out, and actually we'll cover this in a minute, but basically we're going to create a table that's going to hold prices for us. Because we're going to hit a lot of these steps in a minute when I actually go into detail about them. And then step 3 is going to be a multi-step process here. And so when we expand this, it'll be step A. So it'll be 3A. We rename a column. We rename item release date to release date, which is really pretty easy. It's not going to be too crazy. So we're going to rename a column, which is nice and easy. Step 3B, we're going to insert 3 new DVD releases into the item table. So we're going to add some movies of our own. Now, step 3 is one of those fun things where we actually, I'm going to let you pick a movie if you want. You can pick whatever movies you want. And I always kind of say, oh, pick your 3 favorite movies. It's always kind of fun when I'm grading to see what everyone's favorite movies are, because I think it says a lot about you. And again, we'll cover these in detail here in a minute. Step C is we're going to insert some new members, contacts, address, street address, and telephone. And basically, we're going to create Harry Potter, Ginny Potter, and Lily Luna Potter. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the Harry Potter films, Harry and Harry and Ginny end up getting married, and they name their daughter after Lily Luna Potter, or Luna Lovegood, or yeah. I forget the characters. But anyways, long story short, we're going to create some people all the way through, but we're going to use a little trick to do that a little easier. And it has all the values you put into their stuff down here and a way to check it. And we're going to cover that in detail. That's going to be kind of the main focus of today, is how we're going to do chained inserts, which will be really cool. All right. And then step D, we're going to insert some rentals for the Harry Potter and clan. So they're going to rent some movies. You can see here that we give them some various rental 1 day, 3 day, and 5 day rentals, and some certain items. And then step 4 is we are going to fix Common Lookup, and we're going to talk a lot about that in detail. But if you've noticed in Common Lookup, it kind of gets to be a little bit of a pain because we have Common Lookup context and Common Lookup type, and we have, in fact, let's just show you because we're going to jump right in. So Common Lookup is kind of messy. From a design standpoint, it could be fixed, and it's messy somewhat on purpose because we needed a way to show you how to fix tables and do a data migration because we already have data in our tables. It's not as easy as just deleting it and recreating it. And so we're going to kind of show how it's done. So you'll notice right now we have common lookup context, common lookup type, and common lookup meaning. But if I select distinct from common lookup context, or select distinct, and it's a real tongue twister. If we take a look at what's in this table, you'll notice that we have this multiple, and that's something that we want to get rid of. It's messy and it's just it doesn't look very good because really what common lookup context is it's tables, right? The common lookup table holds values for other tables that are common. For example, like our credit card types. If we looked at our credit card type, you'll find that there's only 3 rows. Let's actually fix that. So you'll notice that there's only 3 rows in this of credit card types. And so basically the idea behind the common lookup table is it's not really worth creating a whole nother table for 3 rows. When instead we can have a table that acts as kind of a common lookup value, a place where we store these kind of trivial definitions and put it in here. But the key with doing that is we want to make sure that we have a way to match them with where they belong. So in this case, the member table has credit card type, and that credit card type actually ties into the common lookup ID, which points to these records here. So like 1005, a credit card type in the member table, 1005 is a discover card, and so on and so forth. And so that's why we use this common lookup table, is so that we don't have to waste we don't have to build a bunch of tables for stuff that's all going to be kind of the same format anyways, where it's just a common set of values. So, but we're going to dump into that in a little bit. Just know that basically all we're going to do is we're going to change common lookup context to be common lookup table. So it makes sense. And then we're going to add another column for common lookup column. So that way we know what table and which column discover card applies to. And we'll get there in just a minute. So let's jump right in. So just like we did in previous labs, we're going to use the same files, but we're just going to go straight to lab 6. And I've noticed some people are still using MySQL Workbench. So I'm going to show you this real quick. If you right click on this file and go to properties, you can click this file type options, and you want to make sure kwrite is at the top. Or in my case, I'm actually going to use Visual Studio Code, but MySQL Workbench is really made for MySQL. And so you'll get little errors and it'll complain about things. And even though it works, if you run it in the terminal, if you want something better, feel free to use kwrite. I've installed Visual Studio Code on mine, and so that's what I'm going to use. So I'm just going to apply that, and now that's the default app to open any .sql file. So now I can open this, and you'll notice that it opens right there. All right, and real quick, is that big enough for everybody to see?
No, can you make it a little bit bigger?
Yeah. There we go.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do, and this is one thing that we're going to do a little bit different, because this is one place where the labs have changed just enough that it's going to save us some headache if we do it this way. Technically, it wouldn't hurt anything otherwise, but if you want all your results to match exactly what's in the labs, basically all we're going to do here is this call to the library files. We're going to change this, and we're going to change it so that it calls our setup scripts. And the easiest way to have it call our stuff, I'm actually just going to put them right in here. So I'm going to have this call Oracle lib1, and let's take a look at our files here. Oracle lib1, and the first thing we want to do is we want to clean up our database. Because like I said, starting in lab 6, we're kind of going to start fresh. I didn't want it to do that. We're going to start fresh, and so we're going to make sure everything's all cleaned up. So we're going to go home student data CIT225 Oracle lib1 utility cleanup oracle.sql. And the reason why this is important is because we altered the item table, if you remember right. And we don't want the rating and agency and all that in there, because it doesn't match what we have in the labs. So we're just going to change that. So after we clean up the database, it deletes everything. We want to make sure that we have our tables recreated. And so that's in the lib1 create directory. And we use the create Oracle store 2.sql file. And then next we want to precede. And the nice thing is all this stuff is pretty much the same. So we're going to save some keystrokes and we're going to paste that there. And we're going to call precede Oracle store.sql. And then finally, we want to finish filling all of our data in, and we can call the seeding.sql file. Because in fact, if we open this up, you'll notice that what it does is it just inserts all the other files in here for us. So we're just going to call that one, and it's called seeding.sql, and it is in the seed folder. All right. So there's that for us, and that is going to be what we're going to call to clean up everything and rebuild it. And this lets us start fresh in lab 6. And what I'm going to do real quick just to test this out, I'm going to paste this right in here. And you can see now we're left with exactly a fresh database. So we know that that's all going to work for us. And then we begin our lab 6 files, which is what we're going to do right now. So let's see if I can split this screen just a little bit. Get a terminal over there and our editor over on the other side. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually open up the instructions on my other monitor. But just so you know, that's where they're at. So if you want to follow along, just feel free to pull them up, because unless I need to, I can throw them over on the other screen, but I'm going to just read off it so I'm not flipping windows quite as much. All right, so step 1 is we're going to rename some columns, or we're going to add some columns to the table. And what's nice is these kind of have the steps in here for us. And I'm actually going to pull this over just a little bit so we can see the rest of that. All right, so we're going to write our alter statements because we're adding the rental item price and rental type columns to our database. So to add a column, we alter a table, and we're going to alter rental item. And we can actually add both of these columns in a single step. So we're going to add rental item type, and it's a number. So just like as if we were adding a column to our table, when we create the table, we're going to do the same thing. The only difference is it's in an alter table statement. We have add in front of it. And then rental item price, which is also a number. Now, when I'm writing these, what I like to do is I like to put them in there, and you can choose to run it if you want, but I actually like to run them in the terminal manually as I go. So that way I'm always up to date. So I can see how that's altered, and then we can verify. And like I said, these have steps in here already. So you can check to make sure you got the right thing done. And so this verification queries is what they're called. So I'm just going to run this verification query, and it pulls up the data for the item, for the rental item table. So if I take a look here in the instructions, it says it should display the following results. Um, and so we can just check that against our stuff, rental item ID, number 22, and it looks good. We have 9 columns total. They're all match up. We're good. Spelling does matter. So what I would do is where we added these 2 columns, I would double check the spelling. But you want to just make sure those match. So that's kind of what you're going to do is you're going to do a step and then check it. All right. And then in step 2, we're going to build the price table. And you'll notice that this kind of already has our stuff here to automatically delete it and our sequence for us if it already exists. And then step 1 and step 2 is create the create table statement, create the sequence. So we're going to create both those things. Now, when we're looking at this table definition, we can see all the various column names, the data types, and that kind of thing, as well as the foreign keys. So you'll notice that it has the constraints listed here as well, including like the not nulls. One thing to keep in mind is on the data type, if it says integer, know that it equates to a number data type in Oracle. So I'm going to keep this up over here on my other monitor, and I'm going to help you write a portion of this. So we're going to say create table price, just like we have in the past. And then we're going to create our price ID, and it is a number, and it's the primary key. And so we will add that. Let's just add it right now. Constraint price underscore PK1. We'll just do PK primary key price ID. There's our primary key. Our next column is our item ID, and we can kind of assume just based off the idea of it being an ID column that it's probably going to be a foreign key constraint. But it also has a not null constraint. So we're going to say constraint price underscore NN1 not null. And then our price type is a number. Oh, and while we're at it, let's build our constraint for item. And just in case you guys didn't catch the other video, a foreign key constraint is how we build a connection to another table. So in this case, we want to connect item to price. So basically every item has a price. In fact, every item can have multiple prices because let's say that you do a sale, right? You know, we've all been at the grocery store where all of a sudden milk is 50 cents cheaper. And they've got to be able to track that all for their records, you know, because they have to do accounting, they have to do taxes. And so they need to track when prices are what they are for how long. You know, so let's say it's a 1-day sale. Well, we're going to be able to track that in here, but we need to tie it to an item. So, and just so you know, this is a very similar table structure between price and item is what you would probably have per se in a grocery store. So anyways, let's keep going. So we're going to connect price to item because we have our item ID here. So now we just need to make a foreign key, which is how we build a relationship. We're going to say foreign I before E, except after C, except for in this case, it's a little different. Foreign key on item ID, and it references, and this is where we tell it where it looks to connect. And it references item table and then the item ID column. I'm going to bump that down just one size if that's okay. And so you can see that is what connects our tables there. And our price type is a nullable column for now. So we're going to leave that there. And then we have an active flag. Now this is going to be something new that we probably haven't seen before. And the active flag is a text of size 1. So it's really going to be a varchar2 size 1. Now, one thing that's interesting about the active flag, you'll notice here on the constraint that it says it's a check. And basically what we're doing is we're saying active flag has to either be a capital Y or a capital N. You couldn't put a 0 in there. You couldn't put a in there. It has to be a capital Y or a capital N. And so to do that, we can build a check constraint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say constraint, and I'm going to call it price check 1, and it is a check constraint. And then in parentheses, we kind of specify our logic, and we're going to say active flag in a Y or a no. So it's just like as if you were doing a where clause, right? We use that in. We're doing the same thing because any conditional statement can evaluate to true or false. So if active flag, basically a check constraint just says check to see if this is true. And so if active flag is in Y or no, Y or N, then it will evaluate to true and everything's good. If the check constraint evaluates to false, then it says, whoa, you can't insert that record in there because you're not following the rules. And we do that so that someone can't put a lowercase n, right? Because if someone put a lowercase or a lowercase y or a lowercase n, and we're trying to find all the active prices, we need a common value. We need to make sure that when we say, yes, boss, I got all the active prices because I checked where active flag was equal to capital Y, that it doesn't miss any. And so that's why we put those check constraints on there. All right, active flag. Now this is where we actually get into where we're going to start doing a little bit of our tracking historical records, because not only are we going to track like, oh, what are we currently charging for Hunt for the Red October, we need to know what did we charge yesterday for a Hunt for the Red October, or what did we charge 20 years ago when Hunt for the Red October was brand new. What did we charge for it then? And so that's what we're going to do is we're going to track this by using a start date and an end date. So let's add another record here. Now we're going to say start date, and it is going to be a date column, and it cannot be null. So we're going to say constraint price, not null to, not null. And then our end date is also going to be a date. The only difference is that it can be null because what if we never want that price to end? We don't want to predate everything because that would just get to be obnoxious. So, and then obviously a very important column is the amount. And it is a number. And then with all of our other tables, we have created by, which is a number, a creation date, and this is the same for all tables. And all these are not null, so updated by, last updated by. Oop. Last update date. And that is a date. And all of these are not null, so we're going to do that all at the same time by doing this. In case you didn't know, this is a really cool, this is a really cool trick about Visual Studio Code, is that we can edit multiple lines all at the same time. Maybe. Apparently I don't know how to do it in Fedora. There we go. So there we go. Let's do click. And it's, I don't know the keyboard shortcuts on here, so we're just gonna do it manually, I guess. So we're gonna say constraint price not null, 3 is not null, and we're just gonna take and we're just gonna copy that. And then we will change the numbering. All right, let's see how we did. You guys think it's going to work first try? Yep, what do you know? We did it. All righty, so there's our create table statement. Now we also need to create a sequence. We're going to say create sequence price underscore S1. Oh, and I guess we need to, we'll check later. But we need to create our sequence price underscore S1. And let's make sure we know what we need to start with. So let's check up here. And this is blown up so big I can't see. Instruction details. Okay, create the price table per specification. Let's see. I'm having a hard time reading this because it's so big. All right. So we created our price table and there's our validation query, and we should have it in here as well. So we're going to create our sequence price. Basically, whenever we create a table, we're going to create a sequence, and then we can check to make sure we're all set and good. And again, we would check this against our stuff here. 11 rows, everything looks great. You'd probably want to check it a little bit more than me. And then we're going to check our, oh, and you know what? I forgot to name our constraint the right way. So this one expects our constraint to be the right way. Our no price, because I named it price check one. So we're going to call it yn underscore price. So one thing we need to do there. So this will be a good opportunity. If we ever have to do something like that, I'm actually going to save this and we're going to rerun it. First, we got to get to the right place. There we go. There we go. And so now we're all back to normal, and we're just going to check the log file, and we were on step right here. No, right up here. There we go. And so now that we changed that constraint name, we're good there. So we just want to make sure that we match that constraint name. And I wasn't looking at the instructions. I was just kind of going. But there's our constraint name. And also, so you can use the instructions there. There's also additional details and information on McLaughlin's website. So if you go to, I usually just DuckDuckGo McLaughlin DB1 or Google it. If you ever have any questions, I would recommend coming here as well, because there are some additional details here. So right here, it says you should use the yn price for the name of the check constraint. And this gives you all the same. Table works a little bit better here too. But same thing. Display the following results. There's our stuff. So perfect. We got our table made. All right, and this is where we're going to start skipping just a little bit because I obviously don't want to do everything. But we're going to rename a column. So step 3A is we're going to rename a column. It has a few extra steps in there. So we're just going to, I do want to show you how to rename a column because I don't think we've ever covered it. But it's pretty simple too. We're just going to say alter table item. And we're going to rename, let me put that in all caps, rename column item release date to release date. Let's put this lowercase so it makes sense. So nice and easy. We just alter the table and rename a column. Now, when we insert our 3 rows in the item table, I think that it would, you guys have seen this plenty, but there is one significant little piece to the puzzle that I want to make sure we point out. So when we insert our 3 new DVDs, there's one thing that's going to make your life a million times easier. And that's if we use, because we have to make sure that our value is less than 31 days old, no matter what day it is. And so whenever we rebuild stuff, we're going to make sure, because we want these to be new movies, pretend new movies. It doesn't really matter actually what they are. But for the release date, we want it to be less than 31 days old. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend all these movies came out yesterday. And to do that, we're going to take today, so sys date, and we're going to subtract 1 from it. And that's going to give us yesterday. So that's what we're going to use for all of our release dates. So let's hurry and build an item here real quick. So the way that I like to build my item tables, if I describe item, or how I like to do my inserts, is I like to pull up the table so I know exactly what I'm doing. And I'm going to say insert into item. And then I'm going to list the columns in the order that I want to insert into them. So we're going to do the item ID, item barcode, item type, item title, item subtitle, item rating, item release date, up, and then we're just to the created by, creation date, last updated by, and last update date. So those are our columns of our table, nothing too crazy. And now we're actually going to say what we want to put in there. And this is when we're inserting the values into our table. So we're going to say, okay, we want our item ID. Now this is where we're going to use a sequence. And remember, our sequence is just going to count for us. And we can actually see where that's at right now. If we do item S1, well, we got to select it. If we select item underscore S1.curval from dual, which is a fake table, it gives us 1021. And so that's actually what it's going to insert here for us. So we're going to say insert into item, the values. We're going to use that same sequence. But instead of curval, we're going to use the next val because we want the next available value. If we tried to use curval there, it would throw an error because there's already 1021 in the item table for item ID. So we're going to insert item S1 .next val, which is going to pull the number for us. And let's actually get a look at what we're dealing with for item. Like, what's our barcode look like? Okay, so our barcode looks something a little bit like, you can just make this up. How many characters is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 and 5. Okay, that'll work. Let's describe item again. There we go. All right, now we have our item type, and our item type is where it's, is it a Blu-ray? Is it whatever? And so in this case, where we want to connect it to something, we have to write what's called a subquery. And our subquery is basically where we write a query and we put it inside of another one. And so what I actually like to do is I like to write the query first so I know what I'm getting, because we want it to return a value. So let's take a look at Common Lookup. Let's select everything from Common Lookup, where Common Lookup context is equal to item, because that's going to be where we have our item. So here's kind of some of our options. We can have a Nintendo something or another, but we're going to stick to the movies. And since no one uses DVDs anymore, I'm going to make all mine Blu-ray. And so I need to get 1015, which is basically what we're going to end up in there. Now we could just put this in here, 1015, right, and move on with life. But we want to make sure that what if something changes? What if the ID changes? So we want this to be a Blu-ray no matter what happens to the primary key. So what we're going to do is we're going to write that subquery. So we're going to say, and we know what we want to get. So we just have to write the query to pull 1015. So we're going to select the common lookup ID. And you know what I'm actually going to do? We're going to say clear columns. And we're going to rerun that query so it's the right column name. There we go. So we want to get this 1015. So we're going to select the common lookup ID from common lookup, which is pretty straightforward, right? That'll give us all of the common lookup IDs though. So then we need to say where, and we want to say where common lookup context is equal to item, right? Because we want to filter it down, and we already did that here. So where common lookup context is equal to item, that one's a given because we actually already did this. And I like to think of this logically. We all know how to do this. If someone said, oh, go to this drawer full of filing cabinets that are sorted alphabetically and find the one that's marked Blu-ray, you would be able to mentally sort that out. And that's basically what we have to do here. We just have to slowly filter everything out. And so by doing where common lookup context equal to item, it gives us what we have here. And so now we just need to find the next designated thing. And so in this case, Blu-ray. So common lookup type is equal to blue-ray, all caps. And the reason I like to run this outside of here is because I like to test. And so we can run this and I get one value and one value only. It's 1015. So we did exactly what we wanted it to do. And so now to make this our subquery, we just put parentheses, take our subquery minus the semicolon, and paste it in there. Oops, what did I do? Didn't select it all. And there we go. And subqueries are something that you're going to have to do a lot of, which is why we learned queries first. And so that when we want to pull data, we can pull data to look at, but a lot of times we're pulling data to use in other statements. So in this case, we're going to insert a data from the database. So this is equivalent to 1015. All right, and then after the item type is our item title, and I am going to insert. Let's see, what's one of my new favorite movies right now. Given Halloween time, I'm going to steal everybody's, and I'm going to do Hocus Pocus. And the item subtitle is going to be null. Let's make sure we can put a null there. Let's describe item. We're going to take a look at item subtitle, and yep, it does not have a not null constraint, so we can leave that null. So we're going to put our item subtitle as null. The item rating, I want to say that's PG. Might be PG. I'm sure it's PG. Guessing there. And the item release date, let's see when Hocus Pocus came out. Hocus Pocus release date. Okay, so it came out the 16th of July, 1993. And to do our dates, it goes year. So it goes 93 dash, let's see, what was it? July? Or sorry, I'm thinking backwards from, it goes month. So July, and I usually like to do them all caps. So July 16th, 93. Oh, and you're right. I'm glad you caught me. We want yesterday to be the release date because this is supposed to be a new movie. Um, great catch. So to make it like we talked about, to make it yesterday, what we can do is we can just do a little bit of math, and we're going to say today, which to get today we use sysdate -1. And so let's take a look at what that would look like. So if we said select sysdate -1 from dual, we get the 19th of October, 2020. So nice catch. We do want that to be yesterday. So on all your movies, you can put sysdate -1 as your release date. And that's our release date, and we are good. So now what we're going to do is we are going to do our Who Audit stuff. And what's nice is you can reuse these over and over. But we're going to take a look. Who do we have in system users? Select distinct username from system username. System user name from system user. And I'm going to make sysadmin kind of my main person. So I'm going to select system user ID from system user, where system username is equal to sysadmin. And what's nice, like I said, we can reuse that over and over. So it goes one sysdate, or it goes this twice, because we are not only creating it, but we're also the last ones modifying it. So there is our insert. Let's go ahead and give this a whirl and see how we do. And we get one row created. So now if I wanted to select that, I could say select everything from item where, and if I wanted to get the last thing inserted into the table, I could say where item ID is equal to item underscore S1 dot curval. Oh, and it's a sequence number not allowed here. So what we have to do is use a subquery, and we're going to say select, we're going to trick it. We're going to say select item underscore S1 dot curval from dual. And it's still not liking it. What am I missing here? Where item ID is equal to, maybe Oracle doesn't like that. Well, we're going to find out what it is. We're going to select the item underscore S1 dot curval from dual. And it's 1022, so we can select everything from item where item ID is equal to 1022. And there's our Hocus Pocus film, which was all done for us. So you're going to do that, but you're going to do it 3 times with 3 different movies. And you can get creative. Like I said, use some of your favorite movies. You're going to do 3 of those. All right. And I think you guys got that. So because we've done quite a bit of inserting, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But anyways, on step 3C, we're going to do a chained insert. And with our sequences, we can do a lot of really cool things. And so in this case, we're going to create a group account. And just so you know, in the instructions, it does tell you, it gives you some hints. Let's see, it says insert new members. It says you can follow the pattern introduced by the libseed group account 3 SQL script from Lab 4. So if you want a nice little place to go look at a good model for this, you can go to groupaccount3.sql. I'm actually going to write this from scratch though, just so you can kind of watch how it goes. Now, what I really like about this step is it reinforces the idea that between tables there is a hierarchy, if that makes sense. And we're going to do things in a specific order, in a specific way, so that we connect all this easily in the hierarchy. So for any given person, clear down to telephone, there's a certain set. So for example, because these guys are all in the same family, they have one membership. Just like if we were going to build accounts for your Netflix users, right? There's one membership. So the first step we need to do is we need to build a membership for the Potters. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to insert into member ID. You know what? And maybe just to save some time typing, I am actually going to pull up our little cheat sheet here. So I'm going to pull up group account 3. And you'll notice that we have this group account 3 insert here already for us, which is really nice. So I'm actually going to take this and I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to put it right here. And you guys are welcome to do that. That is perfectly okay. And I'm actually going to delete these because comments in line can cause some issues depending on how and when you're running them. So I'm just going to get rid of those real quick so we can copy from here on out. All right. So here's our member. Obviously, we want to change a couple things. For example, their account number, we're going to make it an 8 because they're different. Or actually, let's just go 99. Make sure they're different. And instead of 3, their credit card number, we're going to do 9999 444 5556, whatever. And the Potters don't use Discover, they use Visa because Visa works better in Europe, I heard. I actually don't know. I'm just making stuff up. But we're going to give them a Visa card. And you can see these subqueries here. So what's nice is this kind of saves you a little bit of time. But the important thing here is notice that we are using next val because we're inserting into member, and this is the primary key, right? So we want to do this. And I'm going to add some comments so we can make sure this makes sense. Insert the group membership for all Potters. And I'm going to put a little note here and say all Potters will use this, because that's kind of the important part is we want to chain certain things together. We're going to connect all the Potters to this. All right. So now we're going to do our insert into contact. Now, what's interesting, so all the, if we were to draw kind of a web, actually, let's see if I can do a whiteboard here. Can I do a whiteboard? I know there's a way. Oh, right here, annotate. So if I was going to do this, we're going to have our member table. Sorry about my terrible handwriting. Our member table's right here. And basically, multiple contacts can be, so let's call that C1. Contact 1 is tied to member 1. Contact 2 is tied to member 1. And contact 3 is tied to member 1. And so you can see there's a hierarchy here, where member is the parent table. And from there, let's say this is HP, Harry Potter, right? Now from there, we have contact, we have address, we have street address, and we have telephone. Well, what we want to do now is inside each one of these contacts, we have their own little set of hierarchy. So contact has an address, and the contact has a street address, and street address is tied to the address table. And then the telephone table is a little bit different because it's actually tied to two different tables. If we take a look here in a minute, if I can figure out how to quit annotating, which we will here in just a minute. Telephone is actually tied to contact, and I believe it's tied to address. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to insert in a particular way because, see, this is duplicated for all these. And so what we can do is we can be smart about how we do our inserts because we inserted our member. Now what we're going to do is we're going to insert all of Harry Potter's records first. Then we're going to deal with all of Ginny's, and then we're going to deal with all of Lily's. And I think it'll make more sense here in just a little bit. And now I don't know how to get rid of that. Annotate. Clear. Clear all drawings. There we go. Okay. So yeah, we're going to start with Harry Potter. And so I'm hoping that this makes sense because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a little comment and I'm going to say Harry Potter because we're going to deal with all of him. And then I'm going to say Ginny Potter. And then we're going to deal with all her. And then we're going to say Lily. And it's only one L, FYI. Lily Luna Potter. And we're going to deal with all records, all the table inserts for each of these. And I'll show you why here in just a minute. So let's pull up our group account 3 because we're going to steal this contact because we're already running out of time, believe it or not. And you'll notice that this follows the same thing. It says insert first contact in a group account user. So, and it goes from contact to address, just like we were talking about. And the reason why we do this is because I'll show you why. Let's hurry and get his name fixed up here. So we're going to do Harry. And spelling of names is going to become important later, so make sure you have the correct spelling of names. All right, we can leave all this the same, but there's one key thing I want you to recognize here, and that is our sequencing. So you'll notice right here our two sequences. This is our primary key. And our primary keys, we always want to +1 on those because we just want the next one. So we use next val. But on our foreign keys, we always want those to stay the same as what it currently is. So the current value. Because if we use the current value, if we use this curval, what that's going to do is it's actually going to automatically connect it to the previous or the last inserted value. And because we're inserting these all at once, we can just use the curval to say, connect this to the last one that I just inserted, which makes it easier because then it saves us from having to write a subquery. Now, I want you guys to be honest with me. Does this make sense? We're going to cover it a little bit more. I'm going to reinforce it. But do you guys kind of get the concept here of how we use the next val for the primary key? Because we say, oh, we want the next one. But when we're connecting our contact and member, where we want to connect something, we're using a row that already exists. So we wouldn't want to use next val. We would want to use curval to connect it to the last one we inserted. Does that make sense? Is that idea kind of making sense to people? Exactly. So Brett nailed it. If we were, let's say we created a member right after we created Harry Potter, contact record, if we decided, oh, let's create a member right here, we're doing things out of order. I'm just going to create another member. Then all of a sudden we couldn't use curval for the next time we insert, because then it's going to connect to not the Potter membership. We would have to use a subquery. And so basically what this is doing is it's just saving us from having to write subqueries. Because if we were to do this without the curval, what we would have to do is we would have to say select member ID from member where, and then we would have to find some unique value. So like where account number is equal to whatever, which, you know, we don't want to deal with because we're inserting them all right now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make that easy and say, oh, just connect them because it was the last one that we inserted. So let's keep going here. So we do our, because I think it'll make more sense, because we did that with member, but now we're going to do that all within Harry Potter. If you remember that little box, we're going to do all of Harry Potter's stuff now. Because we just inserted contact, we can do the same thing with contact, or with address to contact. So you'll notice right here, address next val, because we're getting the next available value because it's the primary key. And we always want to increment the primary key because we can't have duplicates. Like I said, if we put curval there, it's going to throw an error. But on contact, it expects this to be an existing value. We want this contact ID to be equal to the contact ID we just put right here. And we do that by using the sequence of curval, because currently right now, let's say we inserted, let's just insert it. Let's just do it. So first we want to insert the member. Oh, and I can't insert a null into member type. This is really good. So you'll notice right here, member type. And we are trying to insert a null there, which is not allowed. So what we need to do is we need to fix this. And we need to do select common lookup ID from common lookup, where common lookup context is equal to member. Let's make this a little bit easier to read. And you can see why we're going to take a shortcut, is because writing subqueries can get a little bit boring and exhausting. We're going to do where common lookup context equal to member, and we're looking for a group ID. Because if we take a look at common lookup context, or common lookup, select common lookup type from common lookup, where common lookup context is equal to member, all caps. Capitalization does matter, FYI. So what we're doing is we're looking for this group. So just like that, we're going to just say we're common lookup type is equal to group, all capitalized. So now let's try this. And now we get our one row created. All right, now we can look at this. So let's take a look and let's see what member ID is. Let's select member s1.curval, because we want to see what the current value is. Select member s1 curval from dual. So right now, member is 1010. So the Potter's member ID is 1010. We could even put this here in our little notes. It's 1010. And so when we get down here to run this is the equivalent of having 1010 there. But the only difference is that it's going to work no matter what happens. And we get our one row created. And then the same thing's going to happen here on address. So if I do select contact underscore s1.curval from dual. It's going to be 1013 right here. And we want that to connect to Harry Potter, right? Let's just make sure. Let's select everything from contact where contact ID is equal to 1013. Let's just make sure. And what do you know? It's Harry Potter. So we don't have to know what the ID is. We can just say contact s1.curval, and it's going to take care of it for us. So let's go ahead and insert our address. We get a row created. And so on and so forth down the line, we're going to go for street address and then for telephone. So let's do our street address. And the nice thing is that's all done for you. Makes it real nice. Now, one thing about the street address and the address is technically we're supposed to give them certain place to live, which I did not do. You want to make sure they live in Provo, Utah. So if we were doing this correctly, we would actually say Provo, Utah, and the zip code for Provo looks like it is wow, they don't have it in there. 84604. And they have it in the yes, and you are right. In the instructions, they have it spelled out Utah. You'll want to copy pretty much what they have here, and they have it spelled out. So that's what we're going to do. So that's usually what you do, and we're already inserted mine. We're just going to leave it like that. And then for our street address, it looks like they live at 900 East, 300 North. I'd be interested to see what that address is. Never looked it up. So 900 East, 300 North is our street address. And then finally, our telephone. Now I'm going to show you a little trick here. So once we finish telephone, and let's see the area code here. Yeah, for the street address, don't worry about the commas because I'm sure they're just formatting it properly. You'll want to make sure you do what's here in the table for these specific values and not use commas. All right, for our area code, the area code for Utah is 801. And Harry Potter's phone number is just the 333-3333. So let's go ahead and insert our telephone. And there we go. Now, because we just finished Harry Potter, what's easy is to tie this. All we have to do is take our Harry Potter inserts, because if you remember our little boxes, they're all connected. Wow, and I'm scrolling like crazy. We just want to do the individual people now. We're not going to reinsert into member because they're all going to share one. And so now all we have to do, what's really nice about this is we can just do something simple like that. And everything else is exactly the same. So just like that, we have Ginny done. Now, the only thing that's different about Lily is that she has a middle name. So on our contact, we're just going to add a middle name column. And we are going to say Lily Luna. Now, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they put 2 L's in her name when there's just one, which comes back to bite you. So make sure you only use 1 L in Lily's name. I know it's slightly confusing, but there it is. All right, and there is that step. It's nice and easy because you can use group account 3 to do the inserts for you. Now, a little pro tip, because the next step, you're going to insert some rentals. And believe it or not, you can use this same format to do your inserts there as well. So It's not going to be too bad. And if you look over here in our seed, you might notice that there are these rental inserts and these rental. Let's take a look. Notice that we have rentals that we're inserting, and then we insert some rental items. So this is a nice little example you can use to insert some rentals. And now I'm not going to demo that one all the way through because I don't want to give you the whole app, but just know that there's some caveats here. So make sure you read the instructions well. A trunk sysdate value for all rentals in the checkout column, a null value in the return date column. And then you'll want to do an insert into rental and then one or more rental items. So we're going to chain these two. So basically I'll show you the format. Basically on this step, you're going to say Harry Potter rental and items. Ginny Potter rental and items. And then Lily. So then you're going to do insert into rental, ... And then you're going to do insert into rental item using rental ID, rental s1.curval for rental ID. And it lists in the instructions how many items to do. I think Harry Potter rents an old and a new movie. So it'll look kind of like that. And then for the rest of these, let me space this out just a little bit better. Basically, these are going to be the exact same because then you do Ginny's and then you do Lily's. Now, I think the only difference is Lily and Ginny only rent one movie. So it'll look something like that where you can do your rental, because when we do this, we're going to insert rental using nextval. And then when we use rental S1 curval, it's going to tie both of these records to the last inserted rental, which was right here. And then so on and so forth. Because when we do this one, now we change the rental. And so now if we use curval, it's not going to tie to this one. It's going to tie to the last one, which is right here, which is exactly what we want. So that's the format you're going to use when you do your inserts into rental and rental item. And just let's see. Yeah, if you guys want, I'll let you screenshot that real quick, or we can find it later in the video. All right, and someone asked, what does the trunk function do? And the trunk function is a little bit of overkill for most of where you'll see them in the instructions. So if I were to say select sysdate from dual, you'll notice that I just get the date. Well, what the trunk does is it truncates whatever the date is down. And traditionally what it does is it takes the time off of timestamps. Because in this case, you'll notice that it actually makes no difference. But if we appended a time on there, we could take it off. So a lot of times when you're doing math, you'll truncate sysdate down so that it does the math properly. However, that only applies to Oracle databases prior to 10G, and we're actually on 11G. So if I disconnect, you'll notice that we are on Oracle database 11G. Prior databases or prior editions of Oracle didn't necessarily handle that quite as good. And so the reason why it's in your code is because it actually used to be 10G, and sometimes it's good just to make your code reverse compatible in case, you're running it on an older database. one of the problems about change all the time, right? And improvement is sometimes you have to support the old stuff. So the truncate function simply takes data off of the thing. So long story short, that's what the trunc function does, is it truncates the date. Specifically, it takes the time off of a date's timestamp. Good question. All right, dropping indexes are as easy as dropping a table. You'll just say drop index, whatever. So I'm not going to demo that one because we got to get going because we're about out of time. Adding columns, we have already showed you how to do that. In fact, we did it in this very lab. Step 1, we added some columns. So you're going to add more columns down here on these steps. Right here. So now what we want to do is we want to, and we're actually going to do this just a little bit because I kind of want to talk through this just a little bit. So on step 4A, we are going to drop our stuff because, like I said, we're gonna make some changes to Common Lookup. In fact, let's take a look. This one's kind of a doozy. It seems like a doozy, but I promise it's if you just most of the time these instructions are overthought. So please don't overthink the instructions. Just take it step by step. And most of the time, it sounds way more confusing than what it actually is. If I kind of laid out blocks and said, oh, here's our problem, you guys would be able to do this super easy. It's the fact that we're adding some different words makes it seem really confusing. So what I would challenge you to do is try to understand what we're trying to do. And then after you understand what we're trying to do, then try to understand how to do it with SQL. And I think that'll make it easier. So basically what we're going to do is we want to change the common lookup table, and we're going to add common lookup table, common lookup column, and common lookup code columns. And right now in our common lookup table, let's actually just pull it up here real quick. If we if I could grab, it's being all weird. What we're going to do is we are going to take a look, describe common lookup. If we compare that to our current design, you'll notice all we have is common lookup ID and common lookup type, context, and then type and meaning. And type and meaning is like the meat of our sandwich here, because that's actually what holds the data that we're trying to get to. Context is just for us to have a way to organize and find our data. But the problem is like we have home and telephone that are duplicated. So if I select everything from common lookup, where common lookup context is equal to multiple, you'll notice that we have home and work, because you can have a home address and a work address, and you can have a home telephone and a work telephone. And so what we want to do is we want to make it so we don't have this little multiple field there, because we want it to be one-to-one. And you'll also notice that when we were writing some of our subqueries, we didn't quite know what we were going for. Like you'll notice that when I inserted into member, when we had that error where it said the null couldn't insert null into member type, and we had to write this subquery. If you're new to the database, that can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge because you don't know exactly what you're looking for. You know that it points to common lookup, but you don't know, what value are we looking for? Because the member type, are we looking for a Visa card? Whatever. And so what we're going to do is we're going to change common lookup context to be a common lookup table. And then we're going to add another column called common lookup column that's going to hold the column name. So in this case, for member, common lookup table will be member. Common lookup column will be member type. And then the rest of our stuff will be just like it is. Now we're going to add a common lookup code as well that we're not going to use everywhere, but we're going to use it in some cases. Now the problem is, why don't we just rename common lookup context to common lookup table? Well, the problem is we already have stuff linked. So for example, our home and work values, um, currently address and telephone both link up to those. And so if we change that, we're going to have to do some fixing. And to make matters simple, basically what we're going to do is we're just going to create all these new columns. We're going to get them all set up, and then we're going to delete the column that we don't need anymore, which is common lookup context. So we're gonna take a nice slow approach to this. And the first thing we're gonna do is we need to drop some indexes. And the reason we need to drop those is because we're changing the way these tables work, and those aren't applicable anymore. So we're gonna say drop index common lookup n1. Drop index common lookup u2. I'm just going to go ahead and run these. Index dropped. Okay, so step 4A is pretty easy. The next step is we are going to add our 3 new columns. And so let's add those. And because I am prepared and already have these ready here, we got them. So we're going to add our common lookup table, common lookup column, and common lookup code. Now let's run this. Let's execute it. Looks like I forgot the semicolon, and then I forgot that again. Let's try that again, this time without accidentally hitting characters. Here we go. And let's describe common lookup now. And you'll notice that down here we have our 3 new columns, which is exactly what we want. All right. And so now comes not the most difficult part, but now we need to change our stuff over. We need to move stuff where it needs to be. Now we know that common lookup table is going to hold the table name. Now I'm going to show you some tricks here. Sorry, drink some lemonade and it stung. I'm going to show you a trick here to make this a little bit quicker. Let's see, we want to migrate the data. And this kind of walks you through a little bit. We're actually going to be able to skip a step though. So let's take a look, because really what we're dealing with is we want to move context to table. So let's select common lookup context and common lookup table. And we want to select distinct ones of those because we're going to deal with these in bulk. So we're going to say select distinct common lookup context and table from common lookup. So we can see all of our unique values here. So we have member, we have multiple, which is the issue. We have item, system user, and contact. So all of these are going to come straight across, or could, except for this multiple. So let's do that. Let's say update common lookup. And we're going to copy these values over using the update command. We're going to say set common lookup table equal to common lookup context. Now, if we ran it just like that, it would come straight across, right? But we want everything to come across except for multiples. So we just say where common lookup context does not equal multiple. Now you could do those one by one if you really wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could. And so we did that. Now let's run our query again. Now you'll notice that those all came over here for us, except for that multiple. And so now what we want to do is we want to deal with that multiple. And that actually, the way they have these steps broken up here is they have it right down here. So it says query the post common lookup table changes where the common lookup context is not equal to the table names. So that's what we're going to do next is we are going to fix this one where it does not equal it, or where it's equal to yeah. So let's because basically we're looking for members. So we're going to do that same thing. So let's actually just take and copy this. But this time, instead of saying does not equal, we're going to say does equal multiple, because then we'll get that last one here. And then let's check our results. And there we go. You'll notice that we all match across the board here. But the only problem is that we don't want this to be multiple. So instead of pulling that same value, what we're going to do is we're going to change that one to address. There we go. So you'll notice that common lookup context multiple is now becoming address. And the reason we're going to change that to address, because right now we know that those records are shared by telephone and address. Well, instead of having to fix all of the address and telephone records, we're just going to fix telephone, because address can stay address, if that makes sense. Because now if we were to pull this up, let's actually run this validation query. You'll notice now that we have our address, home, and work values right here. And so all of our address are still going to make sense. And so we can skip this address step. Or maybe they, yeah. So we don't have to worry about fixing our address table type records. Those can stay just how they are because they're already connected. So what we want to do is we want to fix our telephone, but it looks like we do that later. So when I said we could skip a step, we're going to be able to skip this one right here, because we are smart. We work smart, not hard. There. Because we updated those ones straight across to address, they're already fixed. They were never broken, but telephone is now broken. But we're going to fix those in a minute. Now what we need to do is we want to remove our bad column. So we are going to drop it. And so to drop it, we're going to say alter table, common lookup, drop column, common lookup context. This is going to be really fun. It's gone. Now if we describe item or common lookup, I don't know why I'm stuck on item. You can see that we no longer have common lookup context. It's all gone because we're going to replace it with a common lookup table. But before we do that, we got to fix telephone. Telephone's all broken right now. And so what we need to do is we need to insert those rows that are going to support telephone. So if we check our stuff here, there's our 3. We're going to migrate, insert, add, here we go. Add 2 new rows to the common lookup table to support home and work possibilities for the telephone type column. And you can see this is just how we're going to insert it. So we're going to say insert into common lookup. Now you got to remember at this point, our table order has changed. So unless you put things in the right order, it's going to make a difference. So you want to make sure you put it in there right. So for example, on this one, I'm going to say common lookup table and common lookup column. You'll notice that even though they're in the bottom here, if I list them all in the right order and then put the values in the right order, it doesn't make a difference. Common lookup type and common lookup meaning created by creation date, last update did by last update date. Now, I'm going to cheat a little bit because we already did some inserts that have those who audit columns. And you remember me saying that you can reuse those over and over and over again. We're actually just going to take those. We're going to come right back down here to where we were working on this. And I'm going to type values. Put that there. We're going to get rid of that. And boom, there we go. And then we're going to do our sequence. Common lookup s1.nextval for our ID. Our table is going to be telephone. Our column is going to be telephone type. And our type is going, let's start with home. And the meaning is just home all pretty. Because one is kind of used by us and the computer so that we don't have to worry about capitalization. We just assume everything's all caps. Where the other one is like what we display in a drop-down menu on a web application. And there we go. We have our one row created. And because we did work once, let's save a little bit more work. And we're going to put this here. And we're just going to change these two values to work and work. And there we go. Now let's select everything from common lookup. And instead of everything, let's select the common lookup table and common lookup column and the common lookup type. And there we go. Now you'll notice that, oh, we don't have our common lookup columns over there yet. And let's see if we missed that. We did, we missed that somewhere. Common lookup, oh, right here. Query the post common lookup column change. So that's what we, yes, we missed it right here. Update the type reference. I don't know where I missed that. We're going to put this back up here where it should have been. I pasted that in the wrong place. All right, so one thing we missed is we want to move all of that stuff over to common lookup column. Now, the really nice thing is for the most part, these all pretty much match up. So like, for example, our system user type, our contact type, our member type, our item type. So telephone type, it just makes sense. And I should have done this before we had telephone. So let's actually delete from common lookup. So we're going to fix this real quick. Where common lookup table is equal to telephone. We're just going to delete those two records. There we go. So they're gone. It's like it never happened. So let's build our common lookup type, our common lookup column stuff. So we're going to say update common lookup. We're going to set common lookup column equal to, and this is where we're going to get a little tricky. We're going to say common lookup table, and we're going to append underscore type to the end of it. Now, this isn't going to do all of them, which I'll show you here in a minute, but it will do most. So we're just going to blanket this. We're going to do this to all of them. So let's go ahead and run this and let's see what we get. So if we look at this, for the most part, our item type is correct. Our address type is correct. Member type for these is wrong, but member type for group or individual is right. Contact type is accurate, and system user type is accurate. And so all we have to do is fix our credit cards. And so let's do that real quick. So all we're going to do is we're just going to fix them. We're going to say update common lookup. just like we did before. Because basically we use the blanket the best we can, and then we fix the odd ones out. We're going to set common lookup column equal to credit card type, where common lookup type is like %_card, right? Because that'll get all of our credit cards. And there's multiple different ways to do this. I just think that's the easiest to find all the credit cards. But that's why we're going to change it to make it so it's easier, because currently that was the best way. But now we can say, oh, we're a credit card type, and we have all of our credit card types. So that looks better, right? We have our system user types, contact types, member types, credit card types. Now, I just want to check system user real quick and make sure. Describe system user type. Okay, we're good. So that gives us what we need to do there. We already dropped context column. Let's reinsert our telephone records. If we would have done that in the right order. I'm trying to hurry because I know we're over, and I apologize. So we create those. Now this is the biggest part that we need to do, because we need to fix. We need to update the foreign keys of our telephone table, because right now, if we were to look at a telephone type, let's select everything from telephone. If we were to look at some of these telephone types, like 1008, select common. Let's select everything from common lookup, where common lookup ID is equal to, what did I say, 1008. You'll notice that that's still tied to address, home phone number. So we need to update those. So what we're going to do is we're going to say update telephone. We're going to set telephone type equal to, and then we're going to put a select statement here. We're going to say select. And we're going to do this in two different batches. And I'm not going to do this for you, but we're going to select the common lookup ID from common lookup, where common lookup table is equal to what, and common lookup column is equal to what, and common lookup type is equal to what. Now I'm not going to finish. That's basically the gist of it. And we can put in here, we can say where telephone type is equal to, and then you would put another select statement, almost this exact same thing here. In fact, I'm just going to take and copy that, but the only difference is this is going to be address, and this one is going to be telephone. So I'm going to let you guys fill in the blanks on the rest of those. You're going to do this twice. They're going to be very similar. So this is going to be for home, and then you're going to do this twice, and this one is going to be for work. You're going to have to run two of those. Technically, you could do them all in the same statement, but this is the easiest for now. But I'll let you guys fill in the blanks there. That should give you plenty to get started. You only have to fill in two blanks. And let's make sure we got the rest of this. You should update the statement that sets telephone type values equal to correct. And yep, that should be all. Yep, that's the last step. So I will let you guys take it from there, but that should get you plenty started. And yeah, I know, sorry we went over. We went over almost by 15 minutes. Does anyone have any real quick questions before we're done? And just so I know if I need to put out any more information, did this help you guys? Do you guys feel like you have a pretty good handle on the lab, or do you feel like you're lost? Okay, and I think when you start going through the lab, like I said, focus on understanding what you're doing and then focus on the SQL to solve the problem. Because one thing that I've noticed in past semesters is because labs 1 through 5 kind of say, oh, do this, do this, do this, that um, sometimes you would just, you understood how to read the instructions and translate that to SQL. But in this one, it's going to do less of do this as far as like, oh, join this to this and insert this here and this here. It's going to do less of that. And it's just going to say, hey, insert these rows into address. Because at some point, we got to start, letting you go, letting you be brave in the deep end of the pool. Um, and hopefully this isn't easing softly. So if you have any questions, just let me know. Um, but just know, try to understand what you're doing from here, and I think it'll make a big difference. But anyways, I've kept you long enough. We've gone way over, so thank you all for being here, and good luck this week.